And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the semi-finals of ESL Open Cup Asia number 214, the IM Katowice edition, where the players, of course, most players in Korea are out traveling, coming back from Poland or still in Poland, returning from a big premier event. And that means that everyone else can vie for the championship spot here in the ESL Open Cup. And who's it going to be? We're here in the semifinals, and spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of Oceanborn, we have the South Korean Protoss player, the red Protoss representing Twisted Minds. It is Classic. And spawning in the top left-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the blue Protoss player, the blue Protoss from South Korea, representing himself. He is currently teamless, looking for a team deserving to be on one. It is NightMare. Let's go. And even though coming into this Classic, I would say is the second best Protoss in South Korea, second only to Hero, he's very well rounded. What I will say is that there are some players out there that are hyper specialized in certain matchups. And I would go as far as to say that NightMare, he has arguably the best PvP in South Korea. Arguably the best PvP in the world. I say arguably. MaxPax has some killer PvP as well. A little bit predictable, but killer nonetheless. But NightMare, he has taken down some big names over the past couple of months. He has taken down Hero, Classic, Creator. NightMare, he has beaten every single Protoss player in Korea over the past, I say, couple of months, couple of weeks even, in the lead up to IM Katowice. NightMare's PvP is insane. So even though on paper, in general, like, he's considered to be a weaker Protoss player than Classic, what I will say is that specifically in a head-to-head matchup, NightMare is, I would say, probably coming in as a favorite player. But here we go. We already have some mind games going on. NightMare, he goes for a probe scout. He sees, hold up, where's your second pylon? We can see it. Second pylon has been thrown down out in the center of the map. This is a fake proxy pylon from Classic. NightMare is still trying to deduce that. He does send out a second probe. Second probe comes out, and this is already worth it. Now Classic has an economic lead because two probes from NightMare are out scouting. Meanwhile, Classic doesn't have that problem. Doesn't have two probes, only has one probe on the map to set up to confirm whether or not there's an expansion. Does avoid the two adepts, and is slipping in for a follow-up scout. NightMare, of course, going to be expanding here on the low ground. Going to be a 2-gate opener, 2-gate adept into additional adepts. Adepts are soon to find each other. Ooh, and we do see Classic coming out. Actually, pretty even trade. Classic will be losing one of his adepts. Good control out of NightMare. He does back off, does get away with a better trade, and I believe, yep, NightMare, he does come across that second pylon. He also does confirm the pylon on the low ground, so he's fully aware that there is not any cheese, there's no proxy, there's no all-in, not yet. Meanwhile, NightMare goes for a Twilight Council here on one base, should be looking to expand, and there it is, expansion on the low ground. Gonna be faster blink for NightMare. Meanwhile, once again, Classic tries to push in, but he gets caught out here by the Stalkers. And good trades from NightMare, does force back Classic, get some extra hits in. Classic behind this, his tech of choice is going to be a Robo. This will be for Immortal production. So Classic, he will be behind when it comes to the quality of his Stalkers, but he can make up for that with Immortals overall. As looking at the unit loss tab here, again, NightMare has out-traded Classic, but Classic has a faster expansion. Classic has a faster Nexus, which means just faster production, faster probe production overall, better economy here for our red Protoss. NightMare, his own Nexus still on the way. Blink has to make up for this. Of course, Blink being chronoed as we speak. And the game is going to be settling from here. We have Classic chilling here on two bases. We have NightMare across the map, working towards Blink. Still waiting for a gateway explosion. There we go. Third gateway's on the way. I'm waiting for the fourth gateway. As I mentioned before, because Classic knows he's going to have the Stalker deficits, that's where the Immortals come in. You can be down 5-6 Stalkers. With a couple of Immortals, you can make up for that fact. You can make up for your lack of Stalkers, for your lack of Blink. Immortals, they do amazingly against Stalkers. Here we go. As we are just going to be building things up, or building up. Robo has been thrown down. Again, this is going to be a safety Robo. We should be working towards detection, towards our observers. NightMare hasn't seen too much here. He did confirm the Robo first, so he's fully aware of the delayed Twilight Council. Should be safe against, otherwise would be Dark Templar. As the game is going to settle from here. Classic now building up towards 4 gates. NightMare, I believe, still on 3. Yeah, and on 3 gateways, he's going to be working towards a 3rd Nexus. So Classic overall going for something more macro-oriented. No Forge yet from NightMare. I'm waiting for the Forge for +1. Meanwhile, Classic is going to be committed. Remember, he delays his 3rd base in favor of better production. Even if he throws down a 3rd now, we have a Prism on the way. We have a War Prism, we have 4 gateways. Classic is pushing. Classic is pushing out. There's that Forge that we spoke about. So again, NightMare, he's setting up for a longer game. Faster 3rd base, for a better economy, Forge for +1. As the game progresses, NightMare's army quality is going to be better. But Classic, he should be pushing. The Prism has arrived. He has 2 Immortals. There we go. We are moving out. Now, this is not an all-in for Classic because he has his 3rd base, but this push is designed to get damage done. Here we go. We're fanning out our units. NightMare getting in position. A 2nd shield battery on the way. He knows how much danger he's in. We do have sentries amassing. Force fields are available for NightMare. Again, Classic, he is up 10 army supply. He has a larger army. Both players have Blink. NightMare's still working on his 1st Immortal. And still working on his gateways. He has less production. Here we go. Classic is pushing in. So far, good force fields, but we have Blinks. Sentries, one of them does go down. Yeah, we trade sentry for sentry. But the Immortals are doing so much damage here, forcing NightMare back. The overcharge is forced. We can focus down the shield battery. Shield battery goes down. The 2nd one is out of energy as well. And Classic, he is barely breaking through. Boys are being pulled. NightMare, all he has to do is hold on. Easier said than done. Good juggling here from Classic, saving that Immortal. 10 probes fall. And Classic, he reinforces here on the front lines. Zealots on the way to buffer. NightMare, he's barely holding on. And just like that, Classic takes a worker lead. Takes a worker lead. Still ahead with that Immortal. He doesn't kill NightMare. He wants the Immortal. Not going to get it. Once again, good control here at a Classic, keeping it alive. His own Immortal has arrived, though. NightMare, he should be able to force this back. He dives onto the Prism. Prism somehow survives. Oh my god. Somehow does survive. The Immortals, they trade with each other. But NightMare pushes on forward. He takes down the Prism. +1 is about to kick in. NightMare, he could go for a counterattack if only he had a War Prism. If only he had a way to reinforce. NightMare, he is pushing. Again, NightMare, he's behind in the economy. Behind in the probe count. He's about to have +1. Does kick in. Shield batteries are not ready, by the way. Again, if only we had a Prism. If we had a War Prism, we could keep pushing. But NightMare, he backs off. Charges on the way. We're probing. And Classic, he gets away with it. Does get away with a better economy until a couple of reps do shade into the natural. Does shade in. Does get 3 probes. Good damage done by NightMare. Prism is being rebuilt. NightMare is posturing, but I believe he doesn't really intend to commit here. Trying to get whatever value he can. Gets a pylon. Yeah, he's working towards a 4th. NightMare is working towards a longer game, a later game. Oh. Ooh, as NightMare, he's getting caught out. Bleeding out a couple too many Stalkers. Oh, 3 Stalkers go down. Yeah, brutal pickoffs there for NightMare. And he's a little bit later with his 4th. Classic already throws his down. I thought that NightMare was going to be a little bit faster there. He does have charge. There's a window. There is a window where charge is not quite done here for Classic. And NightMare, he can collapse on this army. He can 100% he can take a fight. And Classic gets caught out. He gets caught out. We dive on top of the Prism, on top of the Immortal. Prism does avoid those shots though. But NightMare, he can commit and he catches the army. Stalkers are going down. We get a massive warp in, but will it finish? It barely will. But the Immortal goes down. The Immortal was picked up at the wrong moment. GG gets called. NightMare, he catches out the army, catches him with charge. And NightMare takes game number 1. GG. GG, well played. A solid game there from NightMare. And again, as we mentioned, NightMare, he has arguably the best PvP in South Korea. And things looking quite close. Things looking dicey there. Classic was able to take an economic lead. But he was falling behind in a longer game. Remember, he had late charge, he had late forge, late upgrades. NightMare, as the game went on longer, he was able to snowball a little bit. And a slight advantage can mean everything in a PvP, in a mirror matchup. Any slight advantage can just win you the game. And again, Classic was caught with his pants down, was caught out of position, unawares. And NightMare needs one more to advance on to the grand finals. Here we go. Spawning in the bottom right-hand corner. In the bottom right-hand corner of Hard Lead, we have our South Korean Protoss player. The Red Protoss representing Twisted Minds down in this series. Can he fight back against the PvP master? It is Classic. And spawning in the top left-hand corner, we have the PvP master himself. Again, he's been bringing down hero, Classic, creator. Any Protoss player in Korea does struggle against him. It is the blue Protoss, currently teamless, NightMare. Here we go. Now, honestly, looking at the lineups here this week, it almost screams NightMare because I've spoken about this before, and I know we have a couple of new viewers in the chat. For those that are maybe unfamiliar, NightMare, his best matchup, PvP, just slightly behind it, PvT, he has a terrifying Protoss versus Terran as well. We've seen NightMare defeat Beyond, we've seen him defeat Gumiho, like NightMare, likewise, his Protoss versus Terran is terrifying. What lacks, though, for NightMare is PvZ. He reminds me of Skillus a little bit. NightMare's PvZ is his worst matchup, by far. He struggles against, you know, Solar, Shin, Dark, DRG. The Korean Zerg players typically have NightMare's number, but as we mentioned earlier, there are no Zerg players. Every Zerg player in this tournament has been eliminated. Only Protoss and Terran remain, which is ideal for NightMare. He avoids his worst matchup, and this is just, yeah, the best conditions for NightMare to go for a deep run and take it all. Can he go the distance, though? Because even though, like, he thrives against Protoss and against Terran, he still has formidable opponents. You know, that previous PvP was not the easiest game for NightMare, and Classic can easily force an ace match. And here we go. 2-gate opener all around. Second pylon is thrown down in the main, so we're not trying to fake out a proxy. Neither one of our players are. And Classic opening up double Stalker, NightMare, double Adept. Double Adept is on the way. Classic is setting up. Meanwhile, big shout out to Kashim. Shema. Big shout out to Kashim in the chat. Of course, he was also working the event, working IM. Apparently has made it back home just in time, of course, to tune into some ESL Open Cup Asia and maybe even some Europe later on in the evening. Ooh, interesting, as NightMare is going for a robo. This is looking like a one base all in. Robo opener here out of NightMare. Classic applying some pressure here with these Stalkers. It has been very popular here in Korea to go for a 3-gate robo one base all in. I'm waiting for the third gateway. Right now, NightMare, he is trying to deal with these first couple of units. We trade a Stalker for Stalker. Classic coming out ahead. He does shoot first. And Classic, he will shut down that Stalker of NightMare. It will barely fall. Reinforcements are on the way. They come out just in time. But that was a better trade for Classic. Classic going to be expanding here back at home on the low ground. Again, 2-gate opener into expansion into a defensive robo. NightMare goes for his own Nexus. He's expanding. Okay. So, similar builds here. NightMare, he goes for a robo into expand. Classic goes for an expand into robo. Adepts do shade into the main base, disrupting the economy. So, Classic will have the slightly better economy. NightMare will have the faster immortal production. There it is. Prism is on the way. NightMare can soon move out. Classic going to be chilling back at home. Classic does have the larger army. Plenty of Stalkers, plenty of Sentries. Again, the power of a Sentry opener is the hallucination. And with these hallucinations, Classic is going to confirm the expansion. Confirm the lack of all-in from NightMare. Classic will be safe to probe up to saturate his bases. Comes in, robo has been seen, expansion has been confirmed, Classic sees all. Classic did not see, though, that we are taking up even further. NightMare, instead of throwing down additional gateways, Classic doesn't quite see Twilight Council's on the way. Moving up towards Blink. Meanwhile, NightMare being a little bit bold, moving out with a Immortal drop. Immortal and a handful of Stalkers. Dips into the main base, Stalkers are in position. Good volleys on that Prism. Boys are being pulled. One worker does fall. As long as NightMare doesn't lose any units here, this will be worth it. Speaking of, Prism does escape, only taking shield damage. Phew. Prism does make it out. Likewise, Classic going for his own War Prism harass. This time, though, not with Stalkers, but with Adepts. And 2 Adepts, 1-shot probes. This is deadly here to the economy of NightMare. NightMare has to be careful. And here we go. Adepts do shade into that main base. Oof. 1 probe does go down. A lot of lost mine time as well. At the same time, NightMare trying to set up here across the map, but he is denied. Adepts shade towards the natural. Prism threatens the main base as well. Classic trying to pull NightMare apart. Trying to pull him apart, and he is getting damage done. Probes are falling. The Prism going for another big warp in, and the warp in will finish. 4 Adepts in the main base, more workers going down. Eventually we will clean this up, but how much damage will be dealt? As we do force a recall. We do force a recall in the end. NightMare down 1 probe compared to Classic. Could have been worse. Could have been worse. 8 probes did fall. Shows how far ahead NightMare was in that worker count. Now he's down 3 probes, but he is pushing. Quickly checking, Blink is done. Blink just started. Remember, NightMare, he was very tech heavy early on. He got a very fast Twilight Council, very fast Blink. That means that NightMare's army is very high quality here. We have a lot of potential to micro, a lot of potential to control. NightMare, he's moving out across the map towards the natural base. And can Classic keep up? What do we have? 2 Immortals. 1 in the natural, 1 in the main base. Classic consolidating his army, getting ready for the shade. NightMare, he does push in. Throws down the force fields, collapses here on those sentries. Overcharges popped. Force fields making things awkward here for NightMare to engage. Likewise, the Immortals are zoned away. They can barely fight. A much better trade here for NightMare. As I say that, did lose the Stalker. Did lose a couple of extra Stalkers. And he is being forced back. Yeah, the positioning is just too strong. Classic, he will hold, and NightMare has to retreat. Going for the Immortal drop. Blink still is not done for Classic. Can maybe pick off a couple of units, getting some hull damage done. Speaking of NightMare, oh my god, a little bit of miscontrol there. It does take a lot of damage on that Immortal. Or a little bit, I say miscontrol, just a little bit risky play there from NightMare. Almost does lose it. Flying very close to the sun. Almost got burned there. I'm just worried that wasn't worth it because that Immortal is now so fragile to those Stalkers. He's coming back in. Shields are triggered. He gets a Stalker. Gets 2 Stalkers. Up! Blink is now done though. The Prism in a lot of trouble and a lot of hurts. Forced to recall. The Prism goes down. The Immortal as well. And yeah, NightMare, he was just too greedy. Far too greedy there. He got 2 Stalkers for a Prism and an Immortal. Not worth it. Not worth it whatsoever. But NightMare, he has been building up more Immortals. He's down low in the Immortal count. Classic moves out. Loses his own Warp Prism. Oh my god. Ay, ay, ay. Both players do lose their Warp Prisms. Good catch at NightMare. Third base is on the way. Third base just starting here for NightMare. Classics is about to finish. The pressure is on NightMare. Classic rebuilding his 3rd Warp Prism. He can blink into the main. Yeah, he does dive into the main base. Focuses down one of those pylons. Another pylon is exposed. Ooh, the blink though is being punished. A lot of Stalkers going down. Yeah, that wasn't quite worth it for Classic. Gets a pylon but loses, what was that? 4, almost 5 Stalkers. Ooh. Yeah, brutal loss. Forced to recall. Adepts make their way into that natural base. Necessary damage here from NightMare. Remember, he is very late when it comes to his 3rd base, so NightMare, he's falling behind further and further in the worker count. So we gotta go. We gotta push. Our goal here is to either kill the 3rd or kill our opponent. So NightMare is ahead in armor supply. Oh, we have 4 Immortals versus 4 Immortals. Decent force fields. The Immortals, they are engaging. Good juggling here from Classic. The boys are being pulled. They're going to be soaking so much damage here for Classic. Does focus down an Immortal. Will be losing some of his own though. Classic bleeding out a lot of units here. And NightMare, he may just have too much. Remember, he was up 10 army supply here for the fight. The Prism does survive. Tanks some damage. Delta coming in. The Immortals, they survive. One of them barely does. But the Zealots, they force back the army. Just barely. The Immortal. The final Immortal goes down. Prism out of position. And Classic holds. But that wasn't the most cleanest of holds here. Both players lost all their Immortals, and Classic did pull the boys. He lost his worker lead. The worker advantage that Classic once had is now in favor of NightMare. So NightMare, he's ahead in workers, ahead in Stalkers. The Prism did survive, making its way into the main. Likewise, Classic going for his own counterattack as well. One Zealot into the main base. Meanwhile, Adepts shade into the main of Classic. Workers are going down. A surprising amount of damage. Oh my god. At the same time, you can see how efficiently Zealots can trade with charge. Blink Stalkers can struggle here. And we're waiting for our own charge. Charge is still on the way for NightMare. Temple Archives as well. Without charge, NightMare can't push in. He cannot touch this army. Zealots do amazingly tanking Stalker shots as well as Immortals. That's why Zealots are a really big part, a big cornerstone here of mid-game PvP. As Classic is pushing. The Adepts are doing so much damage across the map. They shade into the natural. Good target firing here. More probes are going down. And Classic is all in. Classic is completely all in with this, but he's pushing into charge lots. And into so many shield batteries. We have 3 shield batteries at the 3rd base. Overcharge. 2nd shield battery finishing up here at the natural. Archons are morphed in. That's what's important. Archons, they do trump Zealots. as Zealots are prone to stacking and Archons that do so much splash damage. NightMare, he has the higher form of tech. He's up in army supply. We spoke about it before. NightMare, he has the best PvP in South Korea. And NightMare, he's looking to take this series, looking to collapse on this army. Takes down the Prism, takes down the Zealots. And NightMare, he's snowballing out of control. GG gets called. NightMare will take the series 2-0, advancing on to the grand finals. GG. GG, well played. NightMare does it again. I would say that Classic is the stronger, well-rounded player. Classic, he has a better PvZ, arguably better PvT as well. But in the PvP matchup, this is where NightMare does thrive. This is where he isn't afraid of anyone else in South Korea, maybe even in general. We can talk about Max Packs another time in the European Cups. But yeah, NightMare, he has no fear. He takes down Classic 2-0. And with that, NightMare advances on to the grand finals. GG, well played. He will make it to those grand finals where, does he have an opponent ready and waiting? That is the real question. Does he have an opponent here? Exclamation mark B in the chat if you guys want to have a look at the back of yourselves. We did get some updates earlier as we switch our scenes over and have a look at the bracket. Of course, from the top, Classic did fall to NightMare here. NightMare advances on to the grand finals. And scrolling down to the lower half, we have Creator. Oh my god, Creator. He stumbled a little bit against Nice. Did drop a map, but Creator, he takes down Oliveira. This is what we spoke about. Oliveira may have been a part of IEM. That is true. Oliveira did race back home. For those who don't know, Oliveira, he left Poland early. He left early. He wasn't there for the final day. He did come back home. And he came back home to compete, of course. Clearly, solely to compete in ESL Open Cup Asia. But he gets knocked out in the semifinals. Creator does stop him, stands in his way. And we will have a PvP finals between NightMare and Creator. And we just spoke about it. This could be NightMare's tournament because NightMare has the best PvP in Korea. He just toured Classic. And I'm sure he's more than happy to face off against Creator in another PvP. Oh boy.